Oh, it's really nice. There's so many people here. It's my first time in Armenia. I have no real idea of like who the audience is. So it's nice to see a lot of people who seem very interested in the project. And I guess they've traveled to Sivan to see it, and that also shows their interest. And I just think it's very relaxed and comfortable and good conversations. So I'm showing for Standart. I'm showing a work that I made actually more than 10 years ago. The work is called 1984 and Beyond, and Ruben invited me to show the work here in Standart because the work is based on a conversation that was published in Playboy magazine in 1963, and 63 is the same year that this building was built. So there's a sort of interesting connection between the building and the conversation, and so in a way. So that's what made it such an interesting proposal to show the work here in Sivan. Well, I think it's actually very personal in a way, because for me, I was curious to come to Armenia. I hadn't been to Armenia, and I was also so on one level, it allowed me to connect to Armenia and to the cultural life here. But also, I think in a way, it's really opened up an old work. It's taken an old work of mine that I thought I had a very clear, established kind of understanding of. And it's turned the meaning of it a little bit, because it started to make, because Ruben's idea has made very strong connections between what was happening in the Soviet Union in 1963, in Armenia in the Soviet Union in 1963, this building, and what was happening in America at the same time. And that's very interesting. I mean, I'm from a small country. I'm from Ireland. I mean, it's a different history, but it's also a small country, and it's on the edge of Europe, and so there's things that I can recognize, culturally. I can see, and I can also see that just as I really feel strongly about the value of visual art in an Irish context, I can also see how there's similar discussions that need to be had in Armenia. And I think that if I can play a role in that, by participating in Standart, then that's something that makes a lot of sense to me. When you do an exhibition and it's not in a typical gallery space, that's a lot more work, because you have to sort of invent an infrastructure that's not there. And I think, but I think it's also very ambitious to do that. I mean, I can certainly say, and I think some of my fellow artists in the exhibition, I think we all share the same sort of belief, because we've talked about it, that it's much more interesting to show our projects here in this building than it would be to show them in a museum. And that says everything about the ambition of this project. But of course, it's also more challenging. It's really difficult to finish things. It's difficult to start things, and it's also difficult to finish them. I usually don't, when I'm finishing works, often feels like it's a very circumstantial thing. You have a deadline to finish something for, and that becomes a point of conclusion. There is times when I go back into projects, and then there's times when I just, in a way, don't have the energy for it anymore. I mean, it's just something that, you're very invested in for a period, and then at some point that closes. What's interesting about this situation is that this is a project that was very clearly finished and this situation here sort of opens it up again, and that's interesting. Well, I suppose in a way, I mean, another way of describing what I said before about finishing work is that in a way you reach a truce, if you know what I mean. It's like a war and you reach a truce. It's not a victory or a loss, it's just a truce. You reach a point where neither side moves, and that's the sort of point of where things kind of close. I also think, I have to say, spend a lot of time in my own work. I spend a lot of time working on how my projects are exhibited, and in that sense, that's a sort of ongoing activity. You know, that's something that even when the work is finished, you still have to take care over how it's installed. So, in some senses, it's a bit like raising a child. You know, you're never done raising a child. It's never finished.